Penn State, Ohio State, biggest game of the week. We got number 3 versus number 4. Penn State last week came away with a nice second half performance against Wisconsin. Rabula had to come in and replace Drew Aller. We still don't know the status of Drew Aller. My guess right now, sitting here recording this on Wednesday, is we're going to see both Rabula play. And Ohio State escaped with a really ugly home win against Nebraska. This is our Super 6 game of the week, sponsored by DraftKings. We'll have the column coming out later in the week. Question's going to be, obviously, what will the outcome be of Ohio State at Penn State? We've got all the variables and all those wonderful storylines like we've heard all along with James Franklin, 1-9 against Ohio State, 2-8 against Michigan. So what is that? 3-17 against Michigan and Ohio State. Lost 12 straight regular season games against top 10 teams since they upset Ohio State in 16. Lost 14 of the last 16 games as an underdog, of 2 wins coming against Wisconsin at Camp Randall. And then we got the storyline that I think is a little bit overblown and a little bit of a little bullshit, to be honest with you. The whole Ryan Day's 2-6 against top 5 teams. 3 of those losses came against teams that won the national championship: Alabama in 20, Georgia in 22, Michigan in 23. The last 3 losses came by a combined 8 points, including a couple of 1-point losses like the game at Austin a couple weeks ago. So I think people are just making a mountain out of a molehill there. So there's some of the streaks and the trends and everything. Geoff, I'll start with you. I think the biggest factor and the biggest concern I would have in this game, if I were betting Ohio State, is the Ohio State offensive line. You lose your left tackle. They brought in a backup left tackle last week. He's out now, so they may slide the guard over there to play left tackle and move a new guy in to play. Like, all of these offensive line combinations and woes, how easy is this to kind of fix, manipulate, or is it not? And this is going to be a major, major problem on Saturday.
Oh, I think it's a huge problem, Bear, because when you watch a game Saturday, you were there. I had Ohio State. I think we might have all had Ohio State in some aspect of that game, team total over, game line, whatever it was. And when you watch that game with the offensive line, it was clear early on they were struggling to block Nebraska's front. Nebraska has a good front. And Chip Kelly did nothing different. He called the same game plan and maybe ran the ball even too much with a bad offensive line. And so that was worried me the most, is there was no adjustments off of bye week, right? You had 2 weeks to prepare for the Nebraska game. You had 2 weeks to look at your team, evaluate your team, and say, hey, man, we may not be able to block as well in this game. Let's throw the ball to our best players on offense, which are our wide receivers. Let's get them in space. Let's get the ball down. Let's play action pass. Let's max protect. And now you go on the road to Penn State. What does Penn State do well, guys? They have a good defensive line, right? They have a good defense. And now you're going to pass the ball a lot more. Look, the thing about Ohio State's offense, too, is that Will Howard, I thought he played well in Oregon. Yeah, the late gaffe is what it is. I thought he threw the ball well against Nebraska. So Will, like, if Ohio State decides to throw the ball, I feel better about their chances in this game. But to me, it's just a low-scoring game because Penn State, I don't think it's going to score very much. And even it doesn't matter who plays quarterback. They don't have the weapons to generate explosive plays. And you just take away the tight end, you're done there. And then Ohio State offensive line-wise really concerns me. The play calling concerns me. Can Jeremiah Smith and Ibuka and all those guys make plays at the ball's up to them? Absolutely. But Will, I see an under game, man. I see this game being, maybe a team touches 20, and that's about it.
I'm totally with you, and we've seen this line come down a little bit, so you're losing a couple points of value as opposed to if we were doing the show a couple days ago where, look, it was 47.5, now we're down to 45. I still think the way to play this, under 21.5, first half, available at DraftKings. I think it's going to be a little bit like a boxing match. There's a feeling out process early. It's a little bit ugly. It's a little bit sluggish. Both coaches can be a little bit conservative. We saw that last year. And I think, you go back to last year, I think we see a similar type of game. I think last year was 20-12. And to your point, Geoff, I don't know. Can either team really run the ball? I mean, Ohio State was 28 carries for 64 yards against Nebraska. This Penn State front is going to be better than the Nebraska front. I don't know that Penn State can run the ball on Ohio State. My concern with the full game under is when these teams can't run the ball and eventually they're going to realize, hey, we're just running into a brick wall. They're just going to throw it basically every down. And, even if you're not throwing it successfully, throwing is just bad for unders because, the clock stops or you get big plays, you get, big plays on offense or you get turnovers. Exactly. So to me, this is kind of 10-10 at halftime, 10-7 at halftime. I think it'll be conservative. life on the line. I think Ohio State wins like a field goal game. I'd probably take the points if anything, but as far as actually betting under 21.5 first half is my bet, Sammy.
Market certainly agrees with you two on the total. I mean, this opened about 46.5. They bet it up a little bit and then just slammed it down. So we're sitting 45 right now at most books, 45 at DraftKings. It's hard to go under much lower numbers. Like if it gets to 44, there's going to be resistance back up because 44 is just too low for a number that at one point was at 48. I said last week I would love to take the points north of 3, and that's where we sit because Penn State did its job against Wisconsin, and Ohio State survived against Nebraska. Drop-off wise, Bear, I don't have much from Aller to Pribula. I just don't. And it's so funny because when I started at Fox 3 or 4 years ago, it was wait till you see Sean Clifford get benched for Drew Aller. And now there's no drop-off between Aller and Pribula. The backup quarterback is like the Chicago Bears backup quarterback. Put in Josh McCown. Like that's somehow the backup is always more popular at Penn State. This backup can also do more. Aller's more of a pocket passer, a traditionalist. Pribula reminds me, you know who he reminds me of? Trace McSorley.
Ooh.
That's sort of what he plays like. He can throw, but he can do a little bit of everything. And I know James Franklin is 1-9 against Ohio State, but I don't remember Ohio State's offensive line being in this bad of shape going into a game against Penn State. On a neutral, I've got Ohio State 3 points better. So at Happy Valley, Penn State should probably be a small favorite. Let's be real.
Yeah, and I think to echo your point on Pribula and the offense, like it just looks like Kotelnicki's offense is designed for him. The RPO, the quick throws, like Trey Wallace is not like a deep threat kind of guy. He's more of a get him in space, quick hitter, slants, get him out and make a play. And then obviously you've got Warren. So it will be interesting to see what happens there at State College on Saturday. I certainly feel like if you liked Ohio State to potentially get to the Big Ten championship game and win and avenge the loss to Oregon, I don't know how I feel about that right now. Obviously, they're going to have to win on Saturday to get there. Before we get on to the rest of the card, do you think we might have had this wrong all along in the Big Ten, where maybe Oregon's slow start kind of took us off the scent? And Geoff, you alluded to it earlier, like nothing that happens before Ohio State matters with Oregon. I think that was exactly what you said. So yeah. Do you think we are at a point now where maybe everyone collectively, maybe not just us on the show, but like kind of overrated Ohio State a little bit and maybe got thrown off the scent on Oregon just a little bit because of the slow start?
Well, it's certainly possible, but look, college football tends to boil down to who has the better players, right? I mean, the evaluation services now that give the stars out are pretty accurate. They're pretty good. You may not like them, but they predict first round picks at a high rate. Like they're good at their job. And Ohio State has a bunch of really good football players. Now that doesn't you look into coaching and clearly defensively. On the defensive line, they looked more active against Nebraska, but there's some questions about how good are they really, right? Is the scheme really helping them out at all? And then obviously Will Howard in the offense and Chip Kelly. So I don't know, Bear, if they win this game, which I think they're going to do, I'm not sure they cover, but if they win this game, then all the questions we just had about Ohio State are gone, right? They're just gone. They played slow against Nebraska and whoop-de-doo. They beat Penn State. Then they're back to play Oregon again. Because I think they beat Indiana. Do we all agree? Like Indiana's a great story, but I think when they run up against Ohio State, that story probably ends right there. So then they'll rematch with Oregon. As an Oregon fan, though, I'm certainly rooting for Penn State today. I don't want to play Ohio State again. I mean, that might be the answer, right? I don't want to play that team again because of how talented they are.
Well, think about this, too. If Ohio State loses this game by a field goal, they're still getting in the playoff.
Right.
And I also think that makes them more dangerous. And guess what else? People watching this show care about one thing.
Price.
Bets and price. Well, that's two things. Bets and price. One thing. Bets and price. They go to 7-1 to win the whole thing if they lose this game. But the committee is going to put them in with a 1-point loss at Autzen and a 3, 4, 6 point loss against the Nits in Happy Valley. They're going to be in, and then they don't have to play in the Big Ten championship game. and they get more time to figure out what they're going to do and how they're going to attack teams in the playoff. Can you imagine Ohio State is a 7 or an 8 seed in the playoff? They have more talent than almost every team in the country. And guess what? They're also going to have time to get that offensive line healthy. So a loss here does not kill them. It's weird. I like Penn State in the game, but if Penn State wins, I will bet Ohio State to win the title.
Yeah, something missing with that team, though. I don't know what it is. That wasn't impressive last week. I haven't really been impressed all year. I mean, and Baron, you can downplay the stat like Day hasn't won these games or he hasn't lost these games by a lot of points. I mean, try telling that to Ohio State fans, because if you're not beating Michigan like they haven't in the past few years, and they're not winning national titles, I mean, the rest is just noise. I mean, it's it makes sense what you're saying, but they're just, boy, there's some pressure on him. If they lost like a national title game or whatever, all right, you live with it, you wouldn't be happy, but anything short of like losing a national title game to Georgia or winning it all, oof, I don't know what that's going to look like in a couple months.
They beat Michigan in a couple of weeks at home. That goes a lot. That's more important to those Ohio State fans, I think, than winning a national title. They beat Michigan. You get into the playoff and you lose to Georgia or whomever. Like that's forgivable.
Bear Bets full episodes drop twice a week right here on the Bear Bets YouTube channel. Remember to subscribe to stay ahead of the odds, and let's celebrate all of our wins together.